Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this monthly webinar that I host here at More Soul Sessions. And tonight we are going to be discussing the most important things that you need to know about self-awareness, understanding your emotions, and as a result, how to create magnetic relationships in every aspect of your life. And the one thing that we're going to be talking about is, in my opinion, the most under-acknowledged superpower there is, and that is vulnerability. It's an incredible topic. It totally has my heart, and it infiltrates every single area of our life. And at the same time, it is the thing that we are most scared of by far, and yet it has the opportunity to change the way we interact, do business, feel in love, transform our success rate, all of those things. It's really a powerful tool to be aware of. So the first thing that I actually like us all to do is just to pause. So many of us rush through our lives and we're totally unaware of the present moment. We're just not conscious to it. And when we don't take the time to be conscious, we're not taking the time to be intentional about what comes next in our life. And so one way that I find is amazing to slow down and pause and really check in with my body. I spend so much time in my head that I often forget what's actually happening here in my body, which is a way wiser tool than my brain will ever be, is to breathe. Breath is the only thing that distinguishes life from death. It's the thing we take for granted. It's amazing that it happens automatically. It happens without us. And yet it's the thing that if we really tune into can actually change our state of being. So I'm just going to ask you to close your eyes. And in a moment, we're going to take 5 deep breaths together. In through the nose and out through the mouth. Breathing in possibility, gratitude, and contentment. And breathing out anything that doesn't serve us. So just get comfortable in your seat. Notice if you need to shift your buns. Notice if you want a soft smile to come across your lips. We don't have to be still in meditation. We can be however we want to be. So just give yourself permission to get comfy. And together we'll take our first breath. And then you can just take the remaining 4 in your own time at your own pace. And just gently flutter your eyes open whenever you're ready. Noticing how perhaps you feel more calm, more present, more relaxed for this time that we're going to share together. And I'm so grateful that you're here, that you're watching this, that you're taking time for yourself. That is an act of intentionality in and of itself, and also an act of vulnerability, putting ourselves first. So, I'm going to share tonight the best information I have to share about vulnerability. My goal is to give you as much value as I possibly can on this subject so that you can start applying it to your life right now and see some changes. And if all of this feels really wonderful and you're interested in thinking, I wonder how I could take this further. I wonder what it might be like to experience Sarah in person and be aligned with her and her work. I'm going to invite you at the end of the call to explore a couple of ways that you might want to do that if it feels right for you. So the goal of tonight's webinar is to help you become aware of exactly how you're showing up in each moment of your life, right? So going from a conscious state to an unconscious state, which is unfortunately where most of the population lives. It takes vulnerability to know our emotions on a really intimate level. And what I have found in my experience for myself and with my clients is that when we practice vulnerability consistently, we access a level of confidence and connection that is seriously life-changing. In my opinion, there's no question that vulnerability is one, a superpower, and two, is a skill that is practiced and acquired and strengthened over time. So this isn't a click your fingers and this is going to change overnight. You are definitely going to walk away with skills and insights that can impact you immediately. But know that it takes practice. As with any new skill, we have to build that muscle up over time in order for it to become fully functioning and really strong. Make sense? Good. So let's start with the basics. What is the definition of vulnerability? Okay. Brené Brown, who is one of the leading experts in the world on this subject, says that it is risk, uncertainty, and emotional exposure. Okay, so vulnerability is risk, uncertainty, and emotional exposure. Already sounds a little bit scary, right? It is. Vulnerable comes from the Latin vulnerare, meaning to wound, to be open to being wounded, or to be open to attack or damage. So here's what I know about human beings. We are wired for and love certainty, right? It's basically one of our core human needs. So have you ever thought about having to give that speech at work or tell your child that mommy and daddy don't love each other anymore, but they really love you? Or go and join that Zumba class or get up on the dance floor at the wedding just cringing because you know you are so uncoordinated? Well, it's that feeling that we have of dread, right? Thinking about doing any of those things, or the thing that triggers you feeling like, oh, I'm so uncomfortable in my own skin. I can't believe this is about to happen. I'm really going to do this. So and the reason for that is that we're exposed, right? We really don't know what the outcome is going to be because A, we're not a pro at this. So we don't really know if we're going to be like, if we're going to get through it or if we're really going to suck. We don't know what people are going to think about us. And so we are really putting ourselves out there in sharing this unknown part of ourselves, this undeveloped part of ourselves, and we have zero control, zero certainty over what other people are going to think, how they're going to react. And so that is the reason we run from vulnerability, because if we dare to put ourselves out, get up on stage and give that speech, or bust out a dance move and face the fear of looking like a complete idiot, we're putting ourselves in the arena to be open to attack or damage and to be wounded by people's horrible comments, right? It makes sense. So that is why vulnerability feels like, oh, like a real wrench to put ourselves in that situation. Who wants to think of risk and emotional exposure? Who wants to think of being wounded or open to attack and damage? Hell no. I'd much rather stay in my comfort zone, stay where it's safe, stay where people are going to approve and like me, because that's so much easier. So let me read you the quote that inspired Brené Brown's work around vulnerability. This is the book here, Daring Greatly. I highly recommend it if you haven't read it. And the quote is, it's from Theodore Roosevelt's speech, which was called Citizenship in a Republic. And it's also referred to as the man in the arena quote. And it sums up the dichotomy of vulnerability, right? The pain of having to step in the ring, but also the pain of staying small and staying safe and not pushing ourselves out of our comfort zone. So here's what it says. It was written, by the way, I'm sorry, I don't know when it was written. It was delivered in 1910 by Roosevelt. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again. Because there is no effort without error and shortcoming. But who does actually strive to do the deeds? Who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions? Who spends himself in a worthy cause? Who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement? And who, at the worst, if he fails, at least he fails daring greatly. Hence the title. Such a beautiful quote. I absolutely love it. And what I'd also like to do for you right now is read some of the definitions of vulnerability that Brené came up with in her very extensive research. That's what she is. She's actually a researcher based out of the University of Houston. And in researching and talking to thousands of participants, people in her studies, she collated, obviously, a whole bunch of research, but specifically what I'm going to share with you now, how these people, everyday people like you and me, defined vulnerability. And it makes it really tangible for us how vulnerability shows up in our own life. So, here we go. Vulnerability is sharing an unpopular opinion, asking for help, saying no, helping my 37-year-old wife with stage 4 breast cancer make decisions about her will, initiating sex with my husband, hearing how much my son wants to make first chair in the orchestra and encouraging him while knowing that it's probably not going to happen. Vulnerability is calling a friend whose child just died. It's falling in love. It's exercising in public, especially when I don't know what I'm doing and I'm out of shape. It's admitting I'm afraid. It's standing up for myself and for friends when someone else is critical or gossiping. Vulnerability is being accountable. It's asking for forgiveness. And it's having faith. So many other things besides as well. Those are just some of the highlights that really stood out to me. I just can't help but think about, calling a friend whose child has just died. That is so vulnerable because we're so scared to pick up the phone. I know I would be, because I'd be thinking, God, am I going to say the right thing? Am I going to upset her? How can I love her and support her in a time that I just don't understand firsthand? And, we don't have to know any of those things. All we have to do, as the poem says, is just be willing to step in the arena. Once we're in there, we don't have to be perfect. We just have to show up, and we just have to try, and we just have to love. And that is vulnerability. And yet it still seems so scary, right, to pick up that phone in that situation. It would for me. I'm just changing the page so I can figure out where we're going next. So oftentimes when people hear the word vulnerability, this is the feedback I've got through my years of coaching, people think of the word weakness. And it's only weakness if we have confused feeling with failing and emotion with liabilities. I'll say that again. It's only weakness in our minds if we've confused feeling with failing, and emotions with liabilities, right? So an emotion, a good example of how an emotion can be a liability is, if you see somebody crying and they're like, oh, I mustn't cry, I must keep it all together, everything's good, I'm fine, right? That's us being scared of our emotions. They're liabilities, goodness knows. If we allow those tears to come, where are they going to go next, right? Emotions aren't liabilities. They're an expression of our full self. And yet just showing an emotion can be a massive vulnerability for somebody. So the question I would ask you is, right, do any of those things that I just read, the definitions of vulnerability, sound like weaknesses? No, right? They are, oh my gosh, I would be so proud and excited for anybody who had the willingness and the love to show up to those situations, open-hearted and ready to share their truth, ready to be there for the other person. So vulnerability is absolutely not weakness. Let me bust that myth right now. And in fact, if we want to reclaim the essential emotional part of ourselves and really reignite with our passion and our purpose and feel confidence and connection in our life, we have to learn how to own and engage with our vulnerability and how to feel the emotions that come with being vulnerable. It often takes us just being comfortable with the uncomfortable, right? Being vulnerable means, wow, we're putting ourselves out there. We're putting ourselves in the line of emotional risk of being wounded, of being damaged, of being open to criticism. And so that's going to stir up all kinds of emotions that we can't necessarily predict. And it's okay to feel those. We don't have to fix them. We don't have to label feeling uncomfortable as bad. We can just be with it. And that in and of itself is a process. Here's one thing I know about our human experience here on earth. Change is the only constant in life. Change is always going to happen. Think about raising a child. I just gave birth to a baby boy, my first child, 4 months, almost 5 months ago now. The only thing that's ever going to be true about him is, maybe not the only thing, but the one thing for sure, he is always going to be changing. And when we're raising a child, we have to roll with those punches because we can't stop the time. He is going to grow whether we like it or not. And yet, in life, we want things to stay the same because remember, we are wired for certainty. So if they stay the same, then it can be predictable. Then we feel certain about what's going to happen. We feel safe. Ultimately, we want certainty because we think it brings us safety. It's actually not true. The only thing that comes with change is uncertainty. The only thing. And change is going to happen. So Tony Robbins actually says that the more we can become comfortable with uncertainty, that is what will predict the degree of success we'll experience in our life. So our ability to become comfortable with uncertainty predicts our level of success. I love that because in those moments where I'm reaching for, what's going to be the outcome? How can I control this so it's going to look and feel like exactly how I want it to feel? So I don't have to feel anything that's icky or ugh. I think about level of uncertainty correlates with my level of success. And success doesn't just mean making lots of money, right? It just feels like a full fully realized human being, and we each have different definitions of that. So if I want to feel fully realized and really present to my life, I really want to become comfortable with uncertainty. And that's a daily opportunity for me, right? Life is constantly presenting me with moments that are really uncertain and uncomfortable. So we get exactly what we need to practice. So one thing I also want to talk about is, we've talked about what is vulnerability. Let's talk about, how does vulnerability feel? Brene also came up with a list from the research that she did, and I love this list. So it gives us the chance to start thinking about, yeah, I can relate to that feeling or that moment. So that gives me the insight to know that that's when I'm feeling vulnerability. So you can start pointing out how vulnerability shows up in your life for you. So let's turn to that page in the book, and let me read you some of the things that stood out most to me and that seem most universal. Okay. Vulnerability feels like taking off the mask and hoping the real me isn't too disappointing. I'm going to say that again. It feels like taking off the mask and hoping the real me isn't too disappointing. I think that could be almost like the umbrella feeling that describes all of the other feelings to come, because isn't that what it's all about? You know, we hide back from telling our most intimate truths or saying what's really going on in our lives because we're ashamed and we're embarrassed and we're scared of what you might think of us or think of me. And all we ever really want to do is just be our real selves. We want the courage to tell our full truth and to be accepted. So taking off the mask and hoping the real me isn't too disappointing is so profound, because so often in our life we have the mask up and we're trying to look like the perfect mummy, the perfect business owner, the perfect employee, the perfect wife, the perfect sister, the perfect everything, that we're just play acting. We're not really being true to ourselves. Okay, let me carry on with the list. Vulnerability feels like not sucking it in anymore. It's where courage and fear meet. It feels like sweaty palms and a racing heart. It feels like taking the first step toward what you fear the most. It feels like being all in. No exit strategy, all in. It feels like the terrifying point on a roller coaster when you're about to tip over the edge and take the plunge. Yes, I think about taking that first step into the ring, the man daring to get in the arena. What a moment, right? It feels like freedom and liberation. Yes, that's the brilliant part about vulnerability. It feels like fear every single time. This is so true. Obviously, the more we do things, the easier they become. But if you talk to like the big superstars, you know, film actors, singers, they still get really scared when they're taking on that new role or when they're about to take the stage. And quite frankly, I think it would be odd if they didn't, because it's us showing up in that moment for the first time. You know, it's always a new moment, a new crowd, new faces. You know, we're never the same person moment to moment if we are committed to growing consistently. And so it's a misconceived notion that this is just going to disappear, that we're not going to feel scared. We are. It's just that our relationship to that fear over time is going to change. It's not going to hang around as long as it would have done. And it's also not going to go so deeply and affect us so much as it would have done in the past. It feels like letting go of control. This is also one thing that came up again and again. It said that a lot of participants answered that it feels like being naked, right? And so there were three things that they described most commonly about being naked when it comes to vulnerability. Vulnerability is like being naked on stage and hoping for applause rather than laughter. It's being naked when everyone else is fully clothed. It feels like the naked dream. You're in the airport and you're stark naked. There's such beautiful analogies. The one I think I love the most and that I need reminding of, it feels like freedom and liberation. So while it is scary, no question, and the more we know about ourselves, the more committed we are to our own personal development, the more we can start to identify those fears cropping up. So instead of going, oh my God, they're way too much to handle, where are they coming from? We can start to recognize them as normal, as part of our reaction to stepping out of our comfort zone, right? We start to understand the personal messages of vulnerability as they relate to ourselves and how they show up for us, because they're all slightly different and nuanced. So yes, it's scary, but also the reason vulnerability is amazing and is absolutely the superpower that all CEOs are tapping into, because they're realizing that emotional intelligence is far more valuable than IQ, is because this is what we get from stepping into the ring, right? It gives us the freedom to try. It gives us the freedom to be ourselves no matter the outcome. And that in itself is far more rewarding and a life much better lived than standing on the sidelines and being scared to get in the first place. So it's almost like once the pain of standing on the sideline outweighs the pain and criticism we might fear for trying, then we're ready to go for it. We're ready to try, and we're ready to say, you know what, it's okay. I'm going to be open to emotional exposure. I'm going to be open to criticism, and I'm willing to give it a go, because the pain of standing on the sidelines is too great now. So one of my favorite quotes from Brené is this: vulnerability and shame shared is vulnerability and shame lessened. Vulnerability and shame shared is vulnerability and shame lessened. Meaning, when I am willing to share my story with you, share my truth, share the thing that's intimate, I give you permission to do the same. I give you permission to open up, to be yourself, and to say, oh, I'm normal too, I get it. And so if we can practice vulnerability, which is just letting down our shields and being all of ourselves, we give permission to other people to be human as well and drop their shields. And there is no more beautiful gift in the world, because we're all looking to connect. We're wired for connection. That's why we grew up in communities. We want to feel like we're safe and like we are like each other in similar ways. And we are so much more alike than we are different. So we always, as humans, find more connection in our struggles than we do in our victories. That's just the fact. And I love this quote. I actually don't know who said it. So if you know, please let me know. And if I ever find out, I'll share it with you. But this is the quote. It says, one of the tragic ironies of modern life is that so many people feel isolated from each other by the very feelings they have in common. Right? So we're all struggling with the same thing, with, feeling like we're enough, being loved, the dynamics between husband and wife and wife, husband and husband, in that intimate relationship, parenting, money, like these are all the basic things that trigger us. And so to find commonality and to find humanness in our story is the only thing we're really searching for, because there's just a truth in it that is so freeing. So next time somebody asks you how you're doing, right? This is classic. I'm like, oh, everything's great. How are you? We just answer that question without even thinking. We're totally unconscious. I want you to pause and think. How can I answer that way? How can I answer that question in a way that's actually truthful? Okay, here's the disclaimer. This doesn't mean that you now have carte blanche to just divulge everything that's happening in your life and swamp the poor person who just asked you how you're doing. Okay, absolutely not. So I'm trusting you as somebody who's already self-aware and is seeking more information on the subject. That's why you're here. That's why you're watching this. That you know what is appropriate to share based on the situation, based on the person. Okay. You also are only going to share things with people who have earned the right to hear your story, who have earned the right to your trust. So again, think about who you're interacting with them. You're not going to share the most intimate detail of your marriage if somebody hasn't earned the right to hear that, right? That's not something we just give away freely. And that's it. Those are the disclaimers. Okay, so for example, if somebody says, how you doing, Sarah? I often use an adjective other than good or great. So for example, somebody asked me this morning and I said, I'm absolutely wonderful this morning. How are you doing? Okay, so it can be just an answer that's as simple as that. Or sometimes I'll say, you know what, I'm feeling a little tired this morning, for whatever reason, and I'll let them know. And I'll say, but it's okay. I still had enough sleep overall. I'll get more sleep tonight. And I took some time for myself after I woke up. So I'm really happy to be here. Right? It's like, it feels like I'm giving you some information. So now you might say, oh yeah, I didn't sleep that well last night either. Or, yeah, I've had a really busy morning and I'm feeling a little tired. I appreciate you saying that. Like, it's a point of how are we similar? How can I find a way to connect with you? Okay, some other examples. I've said this at a networking meeting, right? This took vulnerability for me to say this because I feel like I'm supposed to have it all together and my business is supposed to be amazing so that you want to get to know me and maybe buy from me down the road. And it was somebody I knew, I'd met a few times, but I didn't know really well. I said, I'm feeling a little unsure because I have all of these ideas and I'm not sure exactly how they're going to play out right now. I'm trusting that it is, but I'm not sure exactly what the roadmap looks like. And you know what? We ended up having such a beautiful discussion because she said, me too. I've got like this idea and I'm really excited about them. And this is how I'm working with somebody around this idea. But Sarah, I really appreciate you saying that because I don't feel like I have to have it all together. It was great. We just connected as two human beings who are growing businesses and who aren't necessarily sure of how to do that in every single moment. Life is just one big experimentation. So think about that. That's a way that you can actively practice being vulnerable in a really simple way, not necessarily easy. And if you find yourself saying, oh, I'm good, how are you? Go easy on yourself, no problem. Trust me, there are going to be plenty of people who are going to ask you how you are, and you're going to find an opportunity to answer in a way that's more real for you. And I'll also just say, sometimes it's okay just to say, I'm great, how are you? Right? We don't always have to give a super truthful answer or give lots of details. Sometimes that's great and it's enough and it's true. So it doesn't mean we have to share something deeper every single time. Okay, so I also just want to share a story about the different levels of vulnerability that I think can be really helpful for you, because I know that you are already super aware of yourself in many ways. And so it's not that we're talking about going from not practicing any vulnerability to practicing some form of it. It's really, I know you're already being vulnerable, so how can we improve that, and how can you become conscious of it? So let me share a story that illustrates that perfectly. So my husband and I decided that we wanted to try to have a baby. This was, I guess, 2015, so over a year ago. We'd already decided, and we started trying in April, okay? We'd been away on this fabulous trip. We come home, and I'm thinking, am I going to get my period? And I got up one morning, and I knew it was right around that time that it either should be coming or maybe it didn't arrive, you know, how exciting that would be. I went to the toilet, my period started, okay? And it was in that moment that I really realized how much I wanted to have a baby. And I just sat on the loo and I felt really disappointed. I mean, it had only been a month, so I wasn't like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm not pregnant. It was more just like, oh, I do really want to be pregnant, and I'm excited about that. And so I sat on the loo, and I found that I just started to cry. And I said to Preston, oh, my period just started. And he's like, oh, and, you know, he's in bed. I'm in our master bathroom. And I realized that I had two choices. And I don't necessarily know if this was really conscious for me, but it just felt really intuitive. That I could get up from the loo, I could go back into the bedroom, and I could walk to my side of the bed and say, oh, you know, babe, my period started, you know, I'm really bummed about it. It's kind of disappointing. You know, kind of wipe away the tears before I come back into the bedroom. And you know, let him know the truth, right? So all of that is the truth. I'm disappointed. I'm bummed. But it doesn't really feel like the full version of the truth. And that's often where I find the subtlety of vulnerability. So that was option one, right? Option two, which I instinctively did because I'd become aware of how I could become much more vulnerable with my husband, was I came around the corner into the bedroom. I went to his side of the bed. I hadn't wiped away any of the tears. I was continuing to cry, and I looked him right in the eye. Eye contact is a big deal when it comes to vulnerability, especially for a prolonged period of time and when it's something really intense and serious. And I said, oh, babe, I'm so sad. You know, I didn't realize I wanted a baby this much. And, you know, my period started, and I just feel really sad about the whole thing. And then I started to really cry. And then, you know, he just naturally reached out and gave me a hug. And we just kind of sat there for a moment. And, you know, he did say something really beautiful to me. He's like, I'm so glad you shared that, because I didn't know until this moment that it was something that was really I don't think he said important, but, you know, I didn't know that you wanted it that much. And this wasn't, I mean, we hadn't just casually decided to have a baby. We'd been together for 9 years at that point. You know, we'd been married for several years. I mean, we wanted a baby, but it was special for him to really let him in. And so I'm so glad that I opted for lesson 2 or version 2. It's such a subtle difference, isn't it? It's such a subtle difference, but that is oftentimes for me, and also what I find for my clients, how vulnerability can play a trick, because we think we're being vulnerable with version 1, and we are to a degree, but there is so much more room to be emotionally exposed in most of our experiences. And here was what was really cool about going for version 2. I actually acknowledged my emotions in a more profound way than just stuffing them down and getting on with it, so to speak. The second thing is, if I hadn't have told Preston that version or let version number 2 play out in that way, I would have robbed him of the experience of that intimacy between us. And that was a special moment. It was lovely. It was beautiful, right? And so think about all the times, if I opt for version 1, how I am robbing him of the chance to really see me as an emotional creature, which is what we are. And 3, I gave Preston the dignity of being able to handle my emotions, right? My hurt, my disappointment, my truth. And remember, the reason that we pull back, that we choose to be less vulnerable, is because we're scared that maybe the other person can't handle it. We're scared of what they might think. And so subconsciously, we just try and protect them and, you know, let them off the hook so they don't have to deal with it. 1, in case it's too much, and 2, in case we look absolutely ridiculous and they just think we're idiots. And I'm not responsible for another person's reaction to how I'm feeling. The only thing I can be responsible for is being able to share my full self. And that is a gift to the people in my life, that I am giving them the dignity to handle that in whatever way they choose. And you know what? When I show up in that way, which is very graceful, they are often incredibly graceful in return. That's the beauty of it. We are mirrors for each other. So I think it's clear vulnerability is absolutely a superpower, and it changes the way we interact with each other. And remember, these are just small examples of conversations, but our level and quality of conversations lead to our level and quality of relationships. And the level and quality of our relationships absolutely determines how fulfilled we feel overall. So showing up and giving all of ourselves in a really beautiful way and in a way that is appropriate is absolutely, I have found firsthand, the way to be magnetic. People are drawn to people who are willing to tell the truth and say the thing that maybe is hard to hear or that is embarrassing, because it gives them permission to be human and be all of those things as well. And that's all we're ever looking for. So I've given you already a couple of ways to practice vulnerability. One being, you know, your response when somebody asks you how you're doing. The second thing I'd like you to think about is, what is one thing that you might want to share with someone that you love and feel safe with that leaves you feeling naked? It could be something really small. It could be something bigger and more significant. Sometimes for me, that's just telling my husband, stopping him, grabbing his hand and saying, I love the way you made me feel when you said that. It was really special. Thank you. That's an act of vulnerability for me. Right? Instead of being like, oh, babe, thanks, that was awesome, and making a joke out of it. Again, version 1, version 2. So what is one thing you would like to share with someone you love and someone you feel really safe with, because that's a great place to start, that leaves you feeling naked? I invite you to do that now, if you can, and if not, within the next 24 hours. Okay, so that's your challenge. So this is my lesson on vulnerability. I hope that you have enjoyed it. And if indeed you're feeling really excited about this topic and you're thinking, wow, like, how can I dive into this even more and learn more about myself, not only when it comes to vulnerability, but just my traits, my self-awareness, my decisions in general, moving from a more unconscious state to one that's completely conscious, because that's where all your power lies. If you're feeling excited about diving into that, please go to moresoulsessions.com, and on the homepage there is a box that says, yes, sign me up for a call as an individual. And it's there that you can sign up for a free exploratory coaching call with me. We'll discuss what's really exciting and inspiring you right now in your life. We'll coach around how we can start to take actions immediately towards moving you towards that target. And then we'll talk about your level of commitment, right? We'll talk about relationships in your life that are making an impact and where we might need to make some changes and tweaks. We'll just explore you, in short. That's what I'm getting at. And it's completely free. We'll spend about 40 minutes on the call together, and we'll see where that takes us. If we're interested in setting up a coaching structure, or I can share other tools, other programs, other events that may be a better fit with you. So I invite you to do that, and I can't wait to hear from you. Thanks for joining again today. This has been really special, and I hope that you've got a lot out of it, and I love you very much. Mwah! Have an amazing rest of your day, whatever you're doing right now, and hopefully we'll connect soon. Bye.